What's up, everybody? Coach Kurt here with the Elvis Kali Fight Team, doing another episode of 2 FMA-Nerds, talk about stuff. I've been doing a lot of these here lately, but we're ramping up for summer, and then going to take a break, then we'll see. Anyways, today I am bringing on Michael Dzicek. I'm going to get this completely butchered. We talked about earlier, but anyways, he's a good dude that I've been following on Instagram for quite a while, so let's just bring him on, and we'll just jump right into this. What's up, man?
How's it going?
Not bad. So how bad did I butcher it?
You know what? You were half right, which is better than most do. I'll tell you that.
I'll take that.
There you go.
Well, fun. So, Mike, let's do a little story as to who you are, where you come from, what you do, that kind of thing, because you're new on my podcast and got a whole new opportunity for people to meet you. So let's do that.
Gotcha. No, I appreciate that. Well, man, let's see here. Well, being FMA, I've been doing FMA for pushing 20 years now. Started when I was 14. I'm 35 now. And it's one of those things, just was always a martial arts kind of nerd as a kid, was watching the Shaw Brothers movies, the samurai flicks. Just that was my thing, And I'm from Missouri. I'm from the Midwest. So the town I grew up in is about 40,000 people in Missouri. Went to this karate school. My mom, I didn't want to go. I was super nervous, but mom's like, "No, go ahead. Let's go try it." So I started in basic kind of Americanized Shotokan karate, but I saw on the schedule was Kali-Silat stick and blade. All right, some blades. Okay. Took the first class. They put a stick in my hand immediately, and that was it.
Yep, as one does.
Did it every day for the last, like I said, however many years.
That's awesome.
But yeah.
It's interesting. So because we're all, a lot of the people that have been interviewing, you got the guys that are 10 years older than I am, and then you got the guys that are about our age. And it's really interesting about those who grew up with martial arts in America, especially in the Midwest and whatnot, is that martial arts is based upon what was available to you regionally. And so 100%. Go figure, a lot of us have a Taekwondo, Shotokan, Karate background, and a lot of us have black belts in both, because that was what was available.
Right. And I was still doing the karate program, and I was very natural at a lot of the martial arts. That's why when I started, it was just like a fish going in water, as they say. It just came so naturally to me, and my teachers noticed that. So I kind of stuck with the karate for a while, but I think there was a kind of a point I hit where I realized, what? Nothing wrong with the karate, but I could tell where my heart was.
That's reasonable. I'm glad that. So a lot of people wouldn't, because of what's available, just because they're just new and just don't really have any advocacy, they stick with a program forever and have a singular mindset about this is what martial arts is. And it's great when somebody can discover, this is what I like, this is what I gravitate toward, and this is what I'm good at. And also having the support of their instructors to say, yeah, this is what you're good at. Go do that.
100%. And I think, I think sometimes, yes, especially with FMA, we still have that reality concept in our minds.
Yeah.
It's not, it is an activity, but it's not aerobics here. We're learning self-protection. We're learning, it's, I think, one of the close to perfect arts that it allows you to learn how to protect yourself, but also discover yourself. There's so much with FMA that allows you to be personal with it.
Yes.
Which, don't get me wrong, all martial arts can do. I think FMA has a bit of an advantage in that way, that it's extremely easy or extremely accessible to personalize. So while you're learning to just, quote, defend yourself, learning practical combat skills, you're also finding your way. and I saw that, and once again, and with that said, what I'm saying, somebody else who does Shotokan or somebody else who does Kung Fu, they might say the same thing. And like we're saying, that was their thing. And I just knew when I saw this, it's like, I want to do this mostly, my thing.
That's awesome. And yeah, congratulations for that. So speaking of FMA in that lane, what particular FMA lineage do you fall under?
Good question. So, which is kind of funny because when I tell people, first of all, when I say FMA, because I do, FMA and Silat, and they say, "Where are you from?" So, from Missouri. Like, where the hell did you find? How? And it's always a funny story. So I'll kind of start with that as well. So in my karate school, the owner of that school was a certified instructor under a man named Greg Alland. Okay.
Mhm.
Now, Greg Alland, for those who don't know, was one of Leo Gahe's original students back in the 70s. So there was kind of that super group core, Tom Bizio, Bill McGrath, Greg Alland, A.K. Baroka. There's a couple more that I'm afraid I can't quite remember their names. But there was this cell of guys that were there when Leo was kind of unknown. But, he came to New York City and started kind of doing his thing. Very dangerous man,
Mm-hmm.
So the style that I do is a creation from Greg Alland called SinaTirsiaWali.
Okay.
Now, Greg was with Leo, of course, for many years, and Greg kind of did it a bit differently in his way. And also back in the day, too, a lot of the FMA circles were all kind of together. Everybody knew each other. We all know each other anyway, but I mean, it was much tighter because it wasn't as spread as it is now. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So a lot of the guys knew each other. So back in the day, Leo and Greg were near the same age. They're working with the Cañetes. They're learning the Zapata system. They're learning. Leo was way into Salat back in the day, so lots of Silat systems. They were all intertwining. So there is a lot of heavy Dionisio Cañete Doce Pares influence in a lot of the old Pekiti-Tirsia, the Doce Motoros. So Greg, and I have videos of it, Greg was kind of also directly under the wing of the Cañetes for a long time. He also worked a lot with Gerson Nene Tortal, who was Leo's uncle, who later made his system called, with a D, Pekiti-Tirsia Serratas. Both from that Visayan area of Negros, So what happened in '89, that was kind of a thing, is Greg was kind of making his thing. Like it wasn't really Pekiti-Tirsia. I mean, that was kind of the backbone, but it was kind of becoming its own thing, and Leo knew that. So, and people mention our name, SinaTirsiaWali. Okay, it's SinaWali with the word Tertia in the middle. Yeah, you're correct. They said it sounds made up. Well, it is made up because I mean, and these are stories, of course. But Leo said, "All right, Greg, name it right now." Okay, SinaTirsiaWali. That's how the name came about. So it's funny when people kind of see what I do. They see some of the Pekiti-Tirsia material, but don't and I have many friends who are in Pekiti-Tirsia as well. But I don't think it's the same thing. To me, it's not the same thing. It was an evolution of that, even though we share material. And I talk to people too who say, "Yeah, that's not Pekiti-Tirsia. You guys have some of the same terminology or curriculum, so to speak." But Greg took it to this level. So when I met him, he made that in '89, the year I was born. So by the time I met him, he pretty much polished it into this system, and that's what I got. I got certified in that. He gave me guru status when I was, I think, 16. Yeah, 16. And then when I was 24, we don't really have a lot of levels in our system, but he gave me the title of Mas Guru, which is like a senior instructor and an instructor of instructors. And I got that when I was 24.
Well, that's cool.
But yeah.
Well, which is interesting. So I have a Pekiti background, one could say, because I've been in and out of it for like the past 10 years. Predominantly, I'm underneath Guru Turu Kuroch, Belton Lubis down there in Seattle, or down in Bellevue, Washington. But
nice.
I've been influenced with Pekiti for over a decade. So similar story where you just kind of get connected with the old crew. This is like pre-Tim Wade time period.
Yeah.
And then there's the divergence. As we both know, there's a bit of a shakeup right now going within the PTK community once again. So, and I can see early on why your instructors doing their own thing, moving on to, for one, just to have the license of the agency just to do their own thing. And I'm grateful for when people take that initiative and have courage to go do their own thing, because as we all know with martial arts, and specifically Filipino martial arts, where there is still like living lineage, breaking away from the living lineage can be problematic and could cause some issues. And so when somebody can actually break off and do something their own, and one be supportive of it by the rest of the community,
Right.
that's awesome. So yeah, that's great. Congratulations on that.
Appreciate that.
So, I mean, do you interface a lot with the PTK community at large? I mean,
a little bit, and that's pretty recently. Of course, being from Missouri, I was born and raised there. I moved to the East Coast here in Maryland when I was 30.
Okay.
And I'll tell you that the FMA community in Missouri there's not much there. Like there was me, and then I believe there's a combatant group there. In fact, I believe June Occidental, I'm sure you've heard of. His combatant instructor, I believe, is out of Kansas City, which I never knew, which is crazy, right? Like I lived there my whole life, and like I didn't know that guy was there. That's awesome. So when I came into the East Coast, there's a lot of FMA here, a lot, which is good. And that was like the first. It's been these last almost 5 years has been my first like exposure, coming to these groups, and then people kind of seeing what I do, and then I'm invited to some of these things now too. So the town that I frequent around, that I live around, is the Lodger Brothers headquarters. So that's where Bobby teaches. I don't think Apollo lives there anymore. So yeah, there's a lot of PTK out here, and I'm friends with a lot of the members. There's also Tuahone Sadiq out here. So there's quite a bit of Tri-V presence, and a lot of times I meet them at the events, and we kind of shoot the breeze and talk whatnot. No, it's great. And I mean, we haven't really played a whole lot, trained together, usually kind of more in passing, but I mean, it's all peaceful, I mean, to me, it's been very fascinating, just because with Greg Alland, he's not really discussed, which I find interesting, but that's also a whole can of worms of politics. When someone ruffles feathers, certain people make sure that name is not discussed anymore.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Especially like back in the old school days when, even in the PTK world, when you said something, they fight you. So, and that's kind of what my teacher did. If anybody had a certain thing, he'd be like, we could fight and we can figure this out. And, and of course that's the thing too in this community too. And I'm not saying now, but of course, old school way, that if you did get your ass handed to you, you didn't tell anybody. So it went under the radar, but anyway, once again, a whole can of worms of politics, but talking with the other PTK guys, it's been really cool. A lot of them are awesome people, honestly. We'll share some stories, and they see the similarities as well.
Yeah, it's interesting because observing. So one of the things that really got me connected with you, obviously, is through Instagram. The great thing about the internet is we can connect with people based upon our connection speed and whatnot. Because like you, I'm isolated. I live way up here in Alaska, and there's not a lot of FMA up here. There's me. There's one other guy here in town. There's maybe like 6 of us in the state of Alaska overall, and I've been here for 14 years. So like the majority of the FMA on the Lower Peninsula where I live is through my lineage, but it's still small and isolated. So just like being in the Midwest there, I can imagine it's small and isolated. So having the internet available to us to connect through social media, to meet really cool people within our own community, it's great. So point being is I'm going to bring up your Instagram, because there's something in here that I actually really, really liked that I saw here recently.
Okay.
Yeah. Put you on the spot. There was it this one? I mean, this one's cool. But for people who are on just doing the audio, the thing that I really enjoyed about Mike here is the fact that his flows, you generate a lot of power. And you don't see that. You see a lot of flow with people, but you have some dynamic power that you can just generate with the full range of your motion. And this is actually something that I find that's interesting with having a Western practitioner, an American, utilize FMA as a platform is because there's a certain level of physicality and athleticism that and power that a Caucasian can just generate. Because, I mean, I'm assuming you look like you're pressing 6 foot or thereabouts, yeah.
Yep, I'm about 5'11". Yep.
Yep. So
Yes,
the extension, the range, and that overall physical connectivity, you can generate a lot of force, a lot of speed just based upon extension. And being a short 5'5" on a good day Filipino, I mean, I don't have a lot of range. I don't have a lot of reach. So
uh,
my power is based upon mass behind it. But with you, there's some beautiful connecting lines, and with
mm,
a lineage that's connected to PTK, where there's a lot of beautiful lines, especially through the sacred geometry, you can
mm.
generate some amazing power. And that's actually one of the things that I really enjoy watching your videos. And hopefully everybody else will enjoy that as well. But definitely shameless plug, go check out your Instagram. But yeah, it's fascinating to see the different styles and different flavors of people's flow. And that's the beautiful thing about Carenza, honestly. It's just you
Mm,
get to see the expression of the individual. So my
mm.
congratulations to you, sir.
Man, I appreciate that. That's an amazing
Yeah.
compliment. Thank you, thank you. That I work at it, and it's my craft. One of the things that I always taught students too, as I said, there comes a point in your life when the greatest teacher you'll ever have is yourself.
Yep.
And so, and I appreciate you seeing that I have the flow with the power there, because that is something that I worked on.
Hmm.
And a lot of it is, I think you have to be honest with yourself. We always know that. Be honest with your training. And a lot of times, as human beings, we are all guilty of falling into paradigms, whether somebody else's or our own.
Yep.
Here's a funny historical reference, but like the first time the Mongolians invaded the shores of Japan, right?
Hmm.
Japan, they were all the warriors were aristocracy, right? And the way they would fight is they would engage each other by horseback and just duel. So it was just a giant field of soldiers dueling,
Hmm.
and they were used to. So all their training was based upon that.
Hmm.
Their first fight against the Mongolians, what did the Mongolians do? Five at one time, would pull them off the horse, stab them, and go to the next guy. So their first battle, they got annihilated
Yep.
because it was totally outside of their own paradigm.
Hmm.
So I think with training, but we're human beings, so we're all guilty of that. So I think there has to be a level of honesty when you look at what you do.
Hmm.
And you mentioned power, and that's something that I think a lot about. Like, I'm moving a weapon, right? Human beings are very fragile. We're also very resilient,
Hmm.
and we've done sparring before. We've blasted people in the hands. They don't drop their sticks. Someone can take a shot in the head and they can eat it and keep coming, depending on how tough they are.
Yep.
So the flow. So first of all, the power, you got to know that you can hit hard, because it has to make a difference. If I
Yep.
got to hit somebody, it's going to make a difference. And I think about that. That way I'm not like, well, it would hurt, but will it damage? And so I'm asking myself those questions. And the
Yep.
point of flow is just availability. Can I hit from any position? And by flowing, not being blocky, I can hit from multiple positions. I don't have to chamber 1-2. It can be a figure eight. Figure eights have no beginning and no end. It's a constant flow.
Hmm.
So yeah, that's a lot of when I move, I'm thinking that way. The flow to me has a purpose, not just self-discovery and how to make my body move, but the generation of power, like you're observing.
Yep.
Generation of power, but also the availability of that power when I need it. But yeah, so once again, I appreciate that compliment. It's very purposeful for what I'm doing there. So
Absolutely, and it shows, because the fact is, I treat Carenza like many others, and it sounds like with you that you treat Carenza like it's shadow boxing, where it's active meditation, trying to
yes.
process through a specific concept or principle or technique set, but you're actively engaging with uh, your present self, trying to accomplish a task, and that's honestly what differentiate somebody who's just dancing, doing choreography, because there's a lot of crenzas out there that is basically just people dancing with a stick or a sword, and there's no
Fair,
mindfulness. And
fair.
then yeah, and I'm guilty of it too. But there's also
Mhm.
Carenza in there that is like you clearly can tell that they're working some shit out, and
Mhm.
it's
Mhm.
amazing when you can see it. And it's more amazing for the critical eye. Somebody is seeing this stuff that they can pick up on. Oh, I see what you're doing there. That's clever. And it's just that's that having that martial intelligence and that critical mind and the critical eye to see, oh, that's what he's trying to do. I get you. So yeah, it's great.
Yeah, I think train with a purpose always. And yeah, don't get me wrong, it's so fun to move, man. It's so fun to move, and that is therapy for me sometimes. Like if I'm been working hard or I've been kind of sitting all day, and I don't quite know how to shake the feeling, I just grab a stick and sometimes just move around. And even if I'm not moving too hard, but I feel better. Yep. And it's also physical therapy, lack for a better term. But like if I'm feeling kind of tight one day, like, I don't know, and stretching's not helping, grab a stick, move your body, move your entire body. And so in that sense, there's that therapy as well. But yeah, every time with the Carenza too, I'm asking questions. Like everything to me, though it is expression, is also combative too. Like, would this make sense? Would this make sense? And maybe it's like, you know what, this one doesn't. This one doesn't make any sense. I do it because it's fun, which is fine. But maybe how else can I do it? Am I moving my body? If I sped this up, could I do it faster? And sometimes that's why it's good to go slow too. You're learning to flow, but you're paying attention to how your muscles activate, how your body turns over, the alignment of your joints. Because if there's a bit of strain slow, it's not going to work fast.
Nope.
So make it comfortable, make it kind of goo, you know what I mean? Like relaxed. Because if you get it like that way slow, then you speed it up and speed it up and speed it up. And next thing you know, and that's where a lot of my speed came from, is I work for my speed to be not but relaxed. And instead, if you get the alignment right and everything with your muscles firing in the right way, the speed will be there, So even in my flow, it's therapeutic, but also I'm always exploring. I'm always looking at it, always.
And this is that thing about, for one, movement is medicine and movement is life. So, and I reference Dune and butcher it all the time, but again, stagnation leads to obliteration. It is death. It leads to obscurity. So you got to keep throwing rocks in a pond, throw rocks at a window. You just got to keep doing shit. So
100%.
The more you move, the happier you'll be. Because again, you're not making any progress, even in a very, very esoteric standpoint, is you got to keep doing stuff to grow. So by moving, you're discovering. And like you said, you're activating things both in your brain and your body, trying to process something out. And yeah, it's very therapeutic. So, and I think more people need to do that more often. As much as the FMA community focuses so much on like, it's got to be combative, fight for the real world, there's also like the longevity standpoint. This is where Carenza, the art side, is really important, because the art side can supplement as we age and process through certain times, because the window of combative capability is so finite if it's ever there. But you flow as best as you can, because again, mastery is this interesting thing of mastery is a fluid concept, because you're constantly trying to fight and figure it out for your body, make sure it's efficient, effective. But mastery is a lifelong process based upon the individual, because we can regurgitate curriculum, but can we master it to such a point that we can make it work for us? Because there's just certain things I cannot do because I'm 5'5" on a good day and have injuries. And just in the same,
know where your heels, right?
Yeah, exactly. So, but the point being is, like, I'm not going to be jumping anytime soon, because I'm just pretty solid to the ground. So there's things that I could conceptually do, as a human, but reality is I'm not going to do it. So I'm not going to master those techniques. But what I'll do is adjust to what I can. And as I imagine with many other martial artists, they do the same thing.
Sure. And it's funny. I think the conversation of art and application, sometimes I think we see it all over different forums or discussions and stuff. And I definitely argue for the art, but I mean, the way that I see art is application. And there's a sense, what you just said too, that we're built differently. We're different people. And I even say too, that we're different people in our experiences. We're different people in our upbringing. We're different people in our culture. Even within our family, like even if if I was Filipino and you're Filipino, even though our families may be the same culture, that it's still two different households, and every little detail affects that of who we are, which means we think differently. And tell me that doesn't play a role in how you fight. 100% it does. That's who you are, and I think a lot of times too, which makes sense. I mean, human beings, were naturally conformative people, but we see what we see on the internet or whatever, and like I got to do that, which is where you start. But I think that, to me, I'm going to define art the way I define it. Okay, art is self-expression. It's how you do it. And some will say, well, the art is like a beautiful flow. Well, maybe, you know, or sometimes I see art get confused with culture. And I think those are not the same things. Yes, culture has art, but they're not the same thing. The art is how you do it, and you kind of have to find that. You have the backbone of the material, but you got to find how you do it. Yeah, you know, and everybody says that's common knowledge as far as finding your own way. But to me, that applies more for application, because yes, maybe the way that you would strike or move may not be the way I do it. So if I show you precisely how I do it, I could be doing you a disservice. You know, and so to me, that's where the art is. And that's why I think Carenza is great combative practice. Why? Because you're discovering your body. You're discovering how you move. Like, hey, this is awkward. Okay, well, maybe I need to make this a bit better. And you know, that's something too that my teacher always said, Greg Alland, and he was just being realistic about it too. He said, like, there's so much material out there. He said, really, at the end of the day, you do what you like. And that's every human being. And he said, in his mind, that's a good thing. Let's say, like I showed you, double baston, single baston, long blade, short blade, empty hands, silat, all these things. And you're like, you know what? I really like double stick. Cool, do that. Do that. Because you like it so much, you're going to do it more. And because you do it more, you'll probably find other things about a single baston or knife because you like that. Because it's all there. You know, that's one of the beauties of FMA too, is everything is cross-platform. I can do double stick moves with my empty hands. I can do double stick moves with one knife. You know, I discover my elbows or strikes any way with those movements. And but if I like it enough, I'm gonna see it if I explore it. You know, if you practice, you get it. So I think to me, Carenza is great combative practice because you're finding yourself. You got to know your body. You got to know what you do. You got to know how you think. And a lot of times too, when you're moving that way, maybe you're hitting roadblocks or kinks in your movement. That's information you need to know that. You need to know that. You know what I'm saying? But yeah, so I'm an advocate for the art, man. The art is application. You got to know yourself, you know, physically, mentally, how you think, all that stuff. So
absolutely. And art is also, it's as a facet of culture, but what makes art in one argument is that art is all the unique imperfections. Because the fact is, we as individuals, we're unique based upon whom and what we are and where we come from. That all informs our existence. And so there's little bits of us that are a little awkward and quirky, and that's not, and that cannot be replicated by anybody. There's only one me, there's only one you, and the things that you do are unique to you. And that's those expressions of both success, little bits of failure, those little imperfections, and those things that you perfect. I mean, that's art because it's your unique expression. And so when it comes to the martial arts, that part is important. Yes, martial arts is informed based upon combat in the martial way, but when we talk about the longevity of art, it's about the individual process. So it's cool to see the uniqueness of everybody's flow, and I'm glad that people are willing to share it and share it openly without necessarily a force like, you must come join me because I'm better. It's like, no, I'm just sharing something that I love. Because looking on your Instagram, I mean, you're an artist, you're a musician. So I mean, that also informs like your thought process, at least from my observation. It informs your thought process of how you work stuff out and your belief system particular to your craft. So and it's great to see, because as FMA practitioners, because this is an FMA show and we talk in the same circles, it's all about FMA. But we forget about all the other stuff that these people do. So aside from FMA, what do you do?
Whew, man, okay.
What do you like to do?
What do I like to do? Man, so well, you saw on my page being a guitar player. I've played guitar about almost as long as I've done FMA. Definitely a passion. I had a very musical family, so my dad was a guitar player. Nice. My brother, of course, picked it up. My grandmother was a classically trained pianist, so I was just around it. You know, like when I was a little kid, not to show our age here, being in our 30s, but like my dad had LPs, and he was playing Led Zeppelin, he was playing Mozart, he was playing Beatles, he was playing Stevie Wonder. So I was always around music constantly. So it was a natural kind of pickup for me.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I practice every day to get better. That was one of those same thing. That was an industry that I never really got into. People have told me for a long time that I should probably try to get into that professionally.
Yeah.
It's just arts are hard, man. Arts are very hard to make a living at. And when there's once again not a whole lot in Missouri. When I moved to the East Coast, I moved here literally right before COVID hit. So
Yeah.
so put a damper on making connections. And I have some connections now, but I mean, full time working and everything. Definitely still a passion project. It's not the easiest thing to get going, but I've done that forever. I've been doing some work in the film industry, actually. Couple small acting gigs, couple stunt coordinating gigs. I love that stuff. I love the creative like you saw the observation from my Instagram. I'm creative. It's just that's always been something that I naturally do very well. So, but yeah, the creative process being in those things, and I mean those industries. Once again, I'm not really fully in yet, but I'm working there. But bro, that's it, man. I'm kind of boring. I practice, I train, I do weight training, I play guitar, I do movie gigs. That's literally my time. That's my fun.
I mean, it's quite evident that you weight train mainly because the power that you generate in your movement and your athletic capability. So I'll add to that here in a moment. But yeah, that's
okay.
Going into the movie industry. Or trying to break into that. That's fascinating because again, with martial artists, you have a couple of different paths. You can be just open up a school, a teacher of some capacity. A lot of people go in the combat sports realm and compete. And then you have the people and then you got professional martial artists as in like military, LEO, the badge and gun community.
Right.
And then you have this other community. You have the performing arts, which is fascinating because you get a phenomenal practitioners, phenomenal athletic people that get just as messed up as everybody else, but you get to see their body of work more often, but don't get it accredited unless they're superstar stunt people,
Right.
or unless they're on the set of John Wick. But the fact is, like being a stunt actor, that would have been such a fascinating road to go down in another life. And if you can pull that off, that's awesome. Because I would love to see more FMA, as we all would, in the movies.
And it's so funny with that you saying that, like, yeah, that's definitely a goal of mine, is to get more of it there. And I'm trying to be a little more diverse. I don't necessarily want to be just a martial arts actor. Like, I enjoy the art.
Yeah.
So doing that, stunt coordination, they bring me in for certain things. But I mean, I'm sure you know this too, but like FMA is everywhere in the stunt work in Hollywood, but nobody knows it. No one knows it. I mean, 8711, that stunt crew who did the John Wick movies and I think multiple Marvel movies, all those guys, I believe, were built from Inosanto students.
Yeah, the Rumbalicki's people.
Exactly.
Part of the Mars group.
Yeah, exactly. 300, that was Inosanto guys too. I mean, it's everywhere. I mean, literally, it is. There's not. I don't think nowadays there's any fight crew or organized fight scene in a major motion picture that doesn't have FMA in it. It's everywhere.
I mean,
people don't know. It's crazy. So, but like with you, I have a vision that hopefully, like, there would be an FMA moment. Even like, I mean, you and I both know, but the rich war history of the Philippines. God, there's movies upon movies of the history there, man.
Yeah, I mean, a movie or TV show that I would love to see is because stealing from Shaw Brothers style television, because like we see the show Warrior, which follows a Bruce Lee-ish character through the immigration of the Chinese into San Francisco at the turn of the century. That's a fascinating thing because you got the street gang dynamic. It's the gangs versus gangs. Okay. I would love to see something like that with FMA at the turn of the century. Actually, we could go to the point of the insurgency leaving, was pushing Spain out, the U.S. showing up, occupation of World War II, creation of Doce Pares, because that is some great stories there because you have dealing with insurgency, you got some guerrilla fighting, you got some revolutionary stuff in there, you got straight World War II action, and then later on you got some straight up gangster dueling stuff. That would make for some fascinating television.
I agree, man. It's like I said, I think there's an encyclopedia of amazing historical movies that can be made out of the culture.
Yep.
Hey, I'll make it happen for us, okay? That's my goal.
Yeah. Well, got to reach out to Sony Sisson and say, hey, man, make it happen.
There we go. Gotta meet some people, shake some hands, and yeah. I even think some of the stories of like some of the guys that came over here. I mean, can you imagine a movie about Tatang Ilustrisimo or Leo Giron? I mean, the things these guys have been through.
Yeah.
I mean, it's like people wouldn't believe it, but it happened, and I'm like, bro, let's talk to the who's the brothers that make the Marvel movies. What are they called?
Oh, the Russo brothers.
Yeah. Let's get a hold of those guys. So
yeah. I mean, I can only imagine that Ron Bilecki and Diana Inosanto have at least thrown that in their ear a few times because, I mean, how could they not? Same with Jeff Yamada, like all those people.
Right.
I can't imagine they say they could not or that they haven't. So we'll just need to keep pushing at that or just have a private studio just do it. Because like they did the Lumpia movie, which is a Phil Am community spoof Marvel type movie. It's more of a comedy, but I mean, that was a private studio, so why not tell that? We can tell stories, so why not? But,
yeah. I mean, some of these stories may not necessarily require, big green screen or anything. Like, and with independent companies out there nowadays, it's much easier than it has ever been, to be honest. So,
I mean, you could just shoot stuff on your phone. It's easier that way at this point. I mean, with all the content,
it is. Yeah. There was an Oscar-nominated movie I think 2 years ago was filmed on an iPhone, so possible. Yeah,
definitely possible. So going back to weight training and your physicality and your athleticism, there's also another part about that. Is what I find with a lot of martial artists, especially combat sports practitioners, is there's the running joke that if you can't dance, you can't fight.
Mm.
The other part about that is if you dance, you probably have to fight because you danced. So there's that awful 90s cliche, but point being is there's this thing about the musicality and the connection of your physical mental awareness and control in your body. So like I found that dancers and gymnasts make excellent martial artists because they have that kinesthetic awareness, rhythm and timing and body control, and they're just overall they know how to move and live in their body. Musicians, on the other hand, that's a whole different realm because teaching somebody rhythm, as you well know, that's such a hard thing to do. So when you have rhythm, you can adapt it to your movement. That's amazing.
Yeah, no, it's definitely my music affects my training massively. And that's also just with discovery through training. I mean, and even just watching, like, let's even look outside the FMA realm.
Mm-hmm.
Watch a UFC match, watch a jiu-jitsu match, watch a boxing match.
Mm-hmm.
There are good fighters who may be very fast and very strong, but the greats, the tier one professional fighters of the world, it's the timing and their positioning.
Mm-hmm.
Now you got to have power. You got to know that you have the capacity to knock somebody out. You got to have some movement, of course you do. You got to have some athleticism. But what, to me, from what I see, what separates that good from the great is their manipulation of time and space.
Yep.
Right? Like Anderson Silva in his prime, untouchable. Right? Timing, timing and placement. So like with music, it's the same thing. If I had a guitar and I pluck one note, that note is meaningless. What gives a note meaning is where you place it in time and space. Yep. So I see that crossing into my training as well as learning how to manipulate timing and range. Because to me, that's everything. That's everything. You can have a guy who could kill with one hit. If he can't land it, it's meaningless. It's meaningless. But you have a guy, and even somebody who's faster. That's also why a lot of times you see these older Filipino masters. I mean, they're untouchable, and they're old men. They're old men. Yeah, like they're fast, but they're not faster than these young guys. But their timing, their positioning, their IQ of where to be is it's unparalleled.
Yep.
And so I watch those things, watch how the old men fight. They're not being athletic. Even though that I have athleticism, I'm still learning, like, what is it that's making them so good? How are they not getting hit, and how are they creating openings? That to me is music. It's timing and place,
Yep.
learning where and when, and even trying to read where they're going to go. Which, for example, I do a lot of blues. At least I used to do a lot of blues jams, right? That's 90% improvised. So you got to read the guys, the timing, where's it's going to go? Am I leading? Am I following? So yeah, 1,000%, man. The music affects my training drastically all the time. So
That's awesome. Because I had a podcast with my teacher, my good friend Belton Lubis, last year, and we were talking exactly about just this thing about musicality in martial arts. The fact is, you're either late, you're early, or you're on time. I mean, there's that movie with Gene Simmons in it about the drummer, jazz drummer. And there's that great scene of him basically telling him that you're either early, you're late, or on time. And and it's true in all things, like especially with fighting and music, is that you too early to the punch, you miss the opportunity. You're too late to the punch, you got hit. You're just right there, that correct positioning, that correct alignment. You dominate that space. Oh,
right.
but yeah, I'll have to find that movie. It was a great movie.
Is that a Whiplash, you mean?
Yeah, Whiplash. That's the movie.
Great movie. Great movie. Yeah. I find too with timing is if you ever have a chance, I'm sure you have, but the Book of Five Rings by Miyamoto Musashi, right? He talks about similar things too, about disrupting timing, and that could be even like, and you see even though I have a lot of the flow on Instagram and stuff, but my style is very heavy, emphasized on movement and footwork, right? Because that was what Greg Alland always taught us. He said the best way not to be hit is to not be there, So I also look at with stepping, and you see the same thing in other professional fighting as well. With your footwork and your movement can affect how they move. It even disrupting the step. If they step a certain way, they're open. If you know how to see it. And there are, of course, if I want to counter or click or whatever, but even just watching how they move, you can disrupt their timing or force a moment of timing on them. Move where you know they're going to move. And so to me, there's levels of playing with timing. And to me, that's like the final frontier of fighting.
Absolutely.
You know what I mean? Like, you got to be able to hit hard. Cool. You got to be able to be fast. You get your flow. Then that's that fourth dimension, and so on, is knowing how to manipulate that timing. And to me, like, FMA is very rhythmic anyway, man. It really is. Even our flow drills, they're a count 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. It's very rhythmic. And so to me, that's good training too, because you're learning not only what the weapon's doing, but as you know, our dangerous hand is our empty hand. That's tapping, clearing, moving. There's so many things it's doing. So this is the syncopation. This is your beat, right? But this guy over here doing different things. It can move around. So it's a really great way to learn how to manipulate timing, because you got the right before and after, even within the before or after of where that empty hand can go. So yeah, man.
It's all about music, and it's when people make that connection, it's great for them. And so, like, talking about everything about based on footwork is utilizing military principles. So the initiative is the ability to impose your will upon another person or another entity, to manipulate them, to have them come to an end or a result that's advantageous for you. Basically, I want you to do the thing that I want you to do because I did it to you, or I made you do it, or I didn't do something, therefore you responded. So again, action versus reaction. And the initiative is absolutely necessary for battle space management or fight space management, because if I force an interaction and I'm knowing what the response is going to be, I'm in charge. Or better yet, if I don't give a stimulus and it still gives a reaction that I was expecting, I'm still in charge. So, and with music, it's the same thing. Like, you are in the driver's seat. The music is in control to the point of, like, you're following the notes, you're following the music sheet, you're following the intent, but you're the one actually doing it. So either you or you do it and do it well, or you do it and you don't do it well. It's really on you. So the reaction is based upon your input.
100%. Yeah. Yeah. And a lot of times too, like when you look at, let's say if I'm like in an improvisation scenario with musicians, right, with a drummer or a bassist and another guitar player, we're generally trying to do the same thing, trying to play the same song. So if we do our own things, of course, there's no music. But of course, if you're engaged in a fight with somebody, you want to disrupt their timing. And you know, I say too, like, you know, they have a saying in poker, like everybody's got a tell, everybody's got something they do that kind of shows if they're bluffing or not. We talked about too about people and individuals. Everybody has a rhythm. Everybody's got, even just life. You know, you get up and you brush teeth, or you get a coffee, you do your morning run. Everybody has a natural rhythm to their life, and that is even how they walk, how they move, how they think. So everybody's got one. Everybody's got one. And so when you're able to, when you have an opponent there, you hopefully are able to see theirs. And of course, if it's happening fast, you may not have that luxury, but disrupting how they move. And a lot of times you'll see cues. If you see a hiccup in their movement, okay, I just screwed his timing away. There we go. And that's how a lot of times they get caught with hits they didn't even see coming. You don't even have to get through their stick. You just hit them right in the head because their stick wasn't up. You know what I'm saying? And I think, I think learning with music, of course, you all are trying to be on the same page. And sometimes with fighting, you find their page. And like you said before, intentionally make them go against what their own rhythm is. Because now they're not in the game. They have a hard time moving now because they can't do what they usually do. You know?
I would think so. Like with FMA utilizing FMA as a platform for sparring and play with this analogy of music, I can see that FMA and a playful standpoint is similar to like dueling with jazz, because it's all improvisation and trying to win that scenario. Because that makes sense to me.
Very, very, yeah. Well, like, I mean, you called it, man. I think very musically too. So it's, you already called it earlier on. Like it definitely bleeds into my training, you know. So
yeah. And the fact is, we all have our biases or preferences, as we stated before, but that informs the way we teach. And when an instructor finds their voice and their modality of explanation of principles, that they can do this in such a manner that they can teach others, that's awesome. Because there's a lot of great practitioners. I mean, this is a cliche out the window, but there's a lot of practitioners that are great practitioners, but they're awful teachers because they're awful communicators. Because as an instructor, your job is to communicate and facilitate the process of learning. You're not supposed to teach them how to learn, how to think, all these things. Just provide information for them. They got to do something with it. But you still have to convey this information. So if you're able to communicate it in a clear, concise manner that works within your linguistic capability, all the better. And music seems to be yours.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. It's finding my way. And of course, when I teach, I do make some musical references. Of course, you know, teaching itself, like you just mentioned teaching itself is a skill.
Yeah.
You know, and it's something that I try to get better at. You know, that's a learning process for me as well. But making musical references that are also digestible, that people are going to understand. You know, you're not a cool instructor if you talk over somebody's head. That doesn't make you cool. That doesn't make you a genius. You know, so
you're talking at them.
You're talking at them, and you're listening to your own voice. To be honest, you know. But honestly, what helped me out a lot is a few years ago, I worked at a martial arts school here in Maryland, and I taught some Taekwondo to kids. Now, I don't have any training in Taekwondo, but they hired me, and of course, I mean, I just do what they do, right? So I would teach the 4-year-olds. All right. Nobody wants to teach 4-year-olds, which is understandable. It's like herding fucking cats, man. No one wants to do it. And if you lose their attention for a millisecond, they are gone. It is absolute hell.
Teenagers are the same thing, but yeah.
Do what?
Teenagers are basically the same thing.
Oh,
it's just
100%. 100%. So, you know, and I remember at the school that I taught at, there's a guy named Eric Holland who's cool. He worked with Dan and Asano quite a bit. So he and I shared some knowledge. He was former military, Army, so he was stationed around and got to work with Dan and Asano. He worked with Brandon Lee one time when Brandon Lee was still alive.
Nice.
Diana Lee and Asanto. So he's got some good stories. But he and I were, I believe, were the only two guys in the school who would teach the little kids.
Yeah.
And he and I had good conversations, and it's very true. I think Paulo Rubio once had a funny comment. He said, teaching military, you know, when you're an FMA and you teach military or law enforcement, that's the trophy wives of the martial arts instructor. Because we think we're cool, we're hot shit that we taught those. Which, yeah, I mean, I get it if they value it. But here's the thing: those guys are easy to teach.
Yes,
they're already disciplined. They already have a level of intelligence. They're going to understand what you're showing them, and they probably are going to get it like that.
The buy-in is already there. The buy-in.
It's there. Now you have to teach a boxing combo to a 4-year-old, right? Who have a limited vocabulary. They don't know their right from their left. Let's see how instructor you are now. Let's see what you got. And that was humbling, but I'll tell you what, teaching 4-year-olds and adults are not so different. So like me as an instructor just skyrocketed. Just learn, excuse me, from that experience. Eye-opening, man. It's crazy.
Yeah. I owned a school here in my little town for about 8 years, and also my primary educational background is in elementary education. So yeah, I get it. I understand. It's just when you teach teenagers, it's the same damn thing. It's just they're horny and stupid. So there's that.
And you're stupid, and martial arts is stupid, and you know it's all stupid. Yeah.
But then again, also, I was an instructor when I was in the Army, and yeah, privates are basically the same thing. It's just, yeah, it's a tricky thing learning how to teach, because again, teaching is teaching people how to learn. No, it's teaching people how to teach how to learn something that they're going to teach somebody else. Is the long-winded analogy.
Yeah.
Because I mean, it's complicated. Because one, you're learning how to. For one, you have to intake the information. 2, you have to be able to apply it. 3, you have to be able to communicate it. 4, you have to be able to synthesize it through the communication for somebody else to understand. And where you see the product of all that is in their capability and their capability to teach it to somebody else. So it's a long, convoluted thing. So once you figure that out, all the better. So
I like that.
Yeah, it's fun. So with that, aspirations for martial arts. So is martial arts your primary vocation? I mean, it seems like it's been a source of your income. Is it your primary source of income?
It's not, and that's something that I've kind of worked on and off. I know it's not news to you, but FMA is hard to make a living at.
Yeah.
Tim Hartman said a good statistic that I didn't know is he said 1 in every 100 people is a martial artist. 1 in every 10,000 does FMA.
Yep.
That's insane. And that's 1 in 10,000 do it, let alone are good at it or can teach it, you know? So I've tried, and I mean, once again, that's a learning process too, of how do I make this successful? I know that I do have, you know, and I'm always appreciative. People are very complimentary of my skill set, and it's always humbling and great to see. But I know that I do have a bit of a unique position in that community. For one, even though I'm 35, I'm a baby. I'm a young gun. My style is not really well known. And there's not many of us, man. There's me. There's my colleague, Dennis Ocampo in Virginia Beach. There's like 4 of us. Yep. And Dennis and I are the only guys who actively teach this system. Yep. So I definitely have aspirations to grow it, but it's difficult. It's difficult, especially getting people outside of the community. Most everybody in the community is already learning from somebody, which is fine, right? Yeah. So people do learn some things from me, but a lot of times they're already students of systems, so they kind of come to me for like enhancement of what they do. Yeah, it's just fine. Like, hey, you know, hit a little bit harder. How do I get my footwork a little better? How do I get a little faster? Cool, I got you. So it's been an interesting kind of equation that I'm still trying to solve, to be honest. And of course, with FMA, people love the community, and you know, there's kind of me and a couple of guys. We don't really have a community, you know, which makes sense when you have this guy over here who is Filipino. And he's got a connection to a grandmaster, and he's got 20 students. If you're brand new to it, why wouldn't you go to them? And I get that, right? They've got the community, because not everybody's going to necessarily see the combative value immediately. Yeah, so it definitely is an aspiration, but like I said, it's still kind of an equation I'm trying to figure out how to solve. You know, what's my place and whatnot. And because my teacher was one of Leo's original students, there is a bit of a Pekiti-Tirsia identity thing that I work on. Yep. And I'm not that I don't want to be called PTK, but I also try to differentiate them for the respect out of the PTK guys, because it's not the same thing, you know? So I'm like, hey, they have this and this is what I do. but people hear the lineage and they go, oh, well, he's PTK. You know what I mean? So there's a little identity battle as well. So it's a predicament for sure. Working on it, but would love it. I mean, of course, if I could support myself on it someday, hell yeah, I'm all for it.
Yeah, like, that's awesome. And I mean, I'll come back to the whole thing about the young gun, because there's a community of us that are in development about the young guys, our guys our age, basically, that are really the driving force for the next 10, 15 years, especially with things like the internet, like Instagram and social media and the podcast that we do, because there's a group of us that are like mid-20s or 30s to 40s that are up and coming and doing a lot of work and still trying to come out of the shadow of the old men or our own instructors and try to charter our own legacy. Like another example, another person in that situation is Guru Chris Chu. He's one of the modern Arnis guys that I know. His father is Master Bruce Chu. And he's one of GM Remy's original guys, and they have their own thing with Modern Arnis International, but Chris is trying to do his own thing, which is hard because he's got a dedicated lineage through his father, and also being attached to Modern Arnis. That's already a loaded situation. And when an individual goes off to create their own thing, there is a lot of the resistance of like, who are you to create your own thing? Why don't you just be part of those guys? So that's hard. And especially when the market is so specific to already these brand names like Stockton Multi-Style, Serrata, Modern Arnis, PTK, Palintawalk. I mean, the names go on as to like, those are the ones that people know. And then when you throw something completely new into the mix, you run into the resistance of, again, like, who is this guy? Where'd they come from? What gives them the accreditation to do that? But then again, you run into people who like successfully make their own stuff. Like Paulo, he's PTK, but he's a whole bunch of other stuff. So he's his own lineage and his own system that he's developing, or like Dean Franco, or like any other of these people that are innovators, but they come from a lineage prior to that. It's just that jump off point of making your own thing. That is a curious proposition for any martial artist. It's one, taking the courage of saying, hey, I'm going to do my own thing. Going to gamble with it, but the fact is I'm going to do my own thing. So here we go.
Right.
But that's leadership overall. Is if you can do it on your own, face all the potential risk of it, that's leadership. And that's important, because I mean, you could be another person just hanging out in the wings, another soldier in the style, but jumping out of that comfort zone and striving your own path, creating your own legacy, more power to you. So if you are able to do that, that's awesome.
I appreciate that. You know, I would almost sometimes give people a perspective. You know, the styles that exist nowadays weren't just magically placed here out of thin air for us to worship. Okay. Nope. Every style at one point was made up by somebody.
And majority.
Yeah. And they're all young. They're way younger than you think they are, right? But don't get me wrong, the lineage is long because this was passed down by father to uncle to son to grandfather, great. So but the names, a lot of these styles, they're really, compared to Filipino martial arts history, they're brand new, man. Brand new.
Most of them actually are less than 100 years old.
Right.
Less than 100 years. So I mean,
and those grandmasters, what were they doing? They were learning from their uncles, and they might get a little bit from this guy too, and they made their own thing. It's what's the difference? And there isn't really any difference. You know what I'm saying?
Yep.
Like I know with a lot of my lineage, you know, with PTK being more of the Visayan area of Negros, right? That area, and of course there's areas of Panay, which a lot of Greek fighters came from there. There have always been fighting arts there. They didn't always have names, you know, but eventually someone decided to make a name for it, you know. But it was all there. But as far as the styles, to even say they're standard styles, I don't even know if I would go that far, right? Somebody, innovator, right, like we're trying to do, and did the same thing. You know,
I'm running the same like tricky circumstance because my family lineage. So my martial arts, my military comes by way of adoption. So I'm adopted. My adopted family are Caucasian, but they have a martial arts military lineage, the military lineage that goes unbroken to the French and Indian War. I mean, we've been in the Lefflers have been in every major conflict since then. So there's a lot of that. Then as a result of it, there's a lot of martial arts. So the martial arts in my family within the past 100 years is unbroken. Like my grandfather, who brought back an edged weapon system for World War II, he was a Golden Gloves boxer. He was bare knuckle boxer. He was a wrestler. My adoptive father, I mean, he's one of those fighters from the 70s. He's a Kempo guy. He's a Taekwondo guy. He was a shoulder foot guy, and he was also a boxer. So like there's a lineage in passing it down. But what's tricky about it is this edged weapons system that was developed but borrowed realistically by my grandfather through World War II as he went through the Pacific campaign and brought back an edged weapons method and taught it to my family. Now, stripped out all the FMA or whatever Filipino cultural terms, if there ever were, but we have our form of FMA. But trying to like put it out there saying, yeah, this is FMA, sort of. But reality is this, I often ask is it FMA? And the answer is, well, yes, no, sort of. It's FMA because I'm saying it is because one, I'm a Filipino, so I can to a point. But I mean, it's a knife. We're doing stuff with a knife without actually placeholding where exactly in the Philippines that it came from. I don't think I ever will be able to do that, but I can make some associations of saying, hey, Filipino martial arts by way of long, weird lineage and accumulation of knowledge. But honestly, it's starting with me like saying, hey, I'm saying this is FMA because of this is where it came from. Here's my influences, and this is what I'm trying to turn it into. But again, I'm creating something that's my own that has been created by my family. So it's a tricky situation. Because the other part about that is I'm a student of Balintawak. I'm one of GM Bobby's guys. I'm also a student. Yeah, I'm also a student of Datu Kelly Warden. I'm also a student of Belton Lubis. So like I have those lineages, and then I have my own. And it's just trying to plug and play where I can. It can be a little tricky. So
yeah, it can be just because it becomes kind of a reference war. Where did that come from? Where did this come from? But I mean, and that's once again we talked about the history of the Philippines, but I mean the massive, that's been a culture that's kind of perpetually been at war for a very long time, and they had massive influences from other cultures too. The Spanish knew how to still, huh?
Spanish, yep.
The Spanish knew they were not dumb, and they knew how to fight. They did. That's why they conquered so much, and they knew how to sword fight. So there was a lot of times, of course, when they outlawed the use of blades. A lot of the priests, the Jesuits, were teaching the kids how to fence. So of course, that bled. I mean, where did the espada y daga come from? That was a rapier and a dagger. So the massive Spanish influence, of course, the Japanese influence, the Chinese. I mean, even the Persians had martial arts. So I mean, and that could be, once again, that's true of any culture. Nothing's pure. That doesn't exist. And I've had good conversations with Sachi. Ben Lima's grandson. Ben Lima loved karate footwork. He loved the stances. Now watch the stances in Lightning Scientific Arnis. That's karate. And he knew it, but that's what he liked. But he took it and made it his own into his system. You know what I mean? And so, yeah, the purification, like I said, I think it's a bit of a crusade that,
Yeah.
I
mean, even GM Bobby flat out says, he's influenced by Shotokan Karate because he's a Shotokan Karate black belt and boxing. It's clearly evidence. So,
100%. Yeah, and there's nothing wrong with that. That's his Balintawak, and so and of course it still is FMA. He took those things and he made that, so
So it is a funny dynamic of when we say like I've made my own system, deal with it.
Right.
But yeah, once upon that occurs for you, my congratulations and my support in the process therein, because it's a tricky market. It really is. If we're going to talk about business, it's a tricky market because there's some established brand names already out there that we're competing against, and small fish, large convoluted pond. So
you're right, man. No, and I appreciate that. Yeah, I'm just kind of doing what I can and kind of tweaking where I can here or there. Yeah.
So other part of history, these podcasts don't really have a plan necessarily. I just kind of flow where we go. So with it, so you've worked in a taekwondo school. You have, what was it, like a taekwondo karate sort of background as well?
Yeah, kind of an Americanized Shotokan background. Yeah, I got a
Okay.
black belt. I got a first degree in it way back in
Oh,
the day.
oh,
Yeah,
nice.
yeah.
Did you do any combat sports? Anything like wrestling, boxing, Muay Thai, and jiu-jitsu?
A little bit. So the school that I was at was very much a hybrid school.
Yeah,
So there was, I didn't do any jujitsu classes, but there was jujitsu in the curriculum.
yeah,
Little Thai boxing, little kickboxing.
yeah.
I've done a couple, never like anything sanctioned, but some full contact fighting in that. So, and the instructor of that school is also very heavy into some bagua, and
Nice,
we had a really, just don't know where he came from, but we had an amazing Tai Chi teacher too.
nice.
Super chill guy. Like, I'm not sure what he was doing in mid Missouri, but like amazing to watch. And like when he moved fast, there was power in his movement.
Yeah,
So, I mean, I definitely picked up things from there. I mean, there are elements, I mean, honestly, elements of body control and energy transfer that I take from Chinese martial arts into what I do.
absolutely. Like the predominant. So let's dive down this rabbit hole. Hubad Lubad, Panantukan, Sudukan, whatever, just aggressive patty cake,
Yeah.
as I
Yep.
call it.
Yep.
My aggressive patty cake, we've coined it rolling waters, and mainly it's a callback to my family's connection to Shoei Foot and the American Kung Fu Association by way of my dad. But again, our like Panatukan, Sundukan, Huba Lubud, trapping, whatever, is very Chinese martial arts influence, but it's still the same damn thing.
Yeah. 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 I think when you take a lot of the hubad lubad, those kind of motions, and even
Yeah.
there's a lot of silat in what I do as well. But
Mhm.
me, it very much is, and that's why I kind of like the term of calling them energy drills,
Yeah.
because you're building the sensitivity and energy at certain points.
Yep.
And those drills are fun to play because you can put some power into them. But for me, I also like to play them very soft,
Mhm.
just to see like, can I control my center in that position by being as soft as possible? Because to
Yep.
me, it's all energy control. You know
Yeah.
what I mean? And that's a very Chinese method in a lot of ways. But it's fun, good
Yeah.
stuff.
So, like, my esoteric term for it is rolling waters. My tongue-in-cheek term is aggressive patty cake. My
Mm.
general, like, technical term I use for it is just hand fighting.
Hand
Because,
fighting.
yeah, it's simpler that way, but and it doesn't have the cultural connotation that everybody loves to argue over spelling. So, it's
Right.
so here's a fun one, and if you don't want to go into this, that's perfectly fine. But there's a tricky dynamic within the Filipino community, the Phil Canadian community, of having learned Filipino martial arts and indigenous customs from a non-Filipino. And I've
Mm.
talked to several people, and they've had some great results of that, and they had some not so great results of it. And the thing that I will preface with that, for the Filipinos who are going to look at this, who are upset and angry about the colonizer appropriating, it's like, get over it, for one. Two, it's not the instructor's fault that you did not learn this and were not taught this by your community, your family, etc. So
Mm.
check that privilege for one. So with that in mind, have you ran into any cultural conflicts teaching Filipino martial arts to Filipinos, especially Filipino American first, second generation? And if
Mm.
so, how'd you get past that? Or the other side, have you not dealt with this?
Great question.
It's a hard one. And if you're not comfortable answering it, that's perfectly fine.
No, not at all. No, I think it's something that should be discussed. Honestly, no. If I can say that I have never, to my face, I have never experienced any resistance. Honestly,
Okay.
in fact, just because of how rare the Filipino arts are, really out in general public, I would occasionally, like if I was talking to a Filipino at work or whatever, and I'd bring it up, they think it's full of shit. You know, well, for one, most of them, as you know, may not even know what it is.
Yeah.
But some are like, no shit, you do that, really? Oh, cool. And so a lot of times it's a pretty good response. And of course, being in Missouri, like there wasn't a lot of FMA anyway. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? But no, never. I mean, maybe behind my back, I don't know, but never to me have I ever felt any sort of feelings about me teaching it.
Yeah.
What was I going to say? I do know that like Greg Alland, when he was back in the day, there was a lot of that because Greg was very good. And Greg, you know, ruffled some feathers when he was beating some other Filipinos who were top students, which is why Dionisio loved him because he was good. And Dionisio was giving him accolades and honors, and some of the other Filipinos didn't like that, which I understand.
Mm-hmm.
But I'll tell you this, when I've gone to New York City a couple times and I meet people who knew Greg back in the day, Greg never charged Filipinos when he taught them.
Nice.
He said, this is not my culture, it's yours. And so if you want to learn from me, I'll give it to you.
That's awesome.
Which I thought was pretty cool. So with how good he was, he never culturally, he never owned it, you know? And for the same for me as well, you know, I love it if a Filipino is interested, I show them that as well. So to me, like the Filipino martial arts, it is Filipino, but to me, it's a conduit for self-discovery. You know, I never at one point try to identify culturally as that. It's simply my art. I do enjoy when people who are Filipino are like, "That's awesome. Can you show me that?" I'd love to show you that because it's already enriched in our history, you know. So for me, that's kind of my standpoint. Is I try to have such a sharing energy that I haven't really gotten any animosity about it. I've had a couple Filipinos who are like, because I've never been to the Philippines, you know. So I've had some like, why not, man? You should go, and which I should go, right? I've had a couple tell me that it's ironic that I've done this for so long, but I haven't been to the Philippines, which is true, you know. But that's about the worst it ever got, to be honest. So, yeah.
No, that's awesome. And I'm happy for you that you haven't had some major overt resistance, because I've met some guys that straight up have, and that's really unfortunate for them, but more unfortunately for the Filipino not to be so elevated and enlightened enough to get past their frustration and their anger, and just like take the information in from the source that they get it from. And the fact that the source is genuinely passionate about the thing that is unique to their culture and sharing it to them, it's all more power to them. Just like take in the information. The source should not, I mean, it does matter, but it should not matter when it comes to like this issue about authenticity, because I mean, the dynamic is dealing with preservation of culture versus living the culture, and by living the culture you create new culture. And so this is a constant dynamic for the diaspora of colonized peoples. And so part of that dynamic is you have people who are knowledge bearers, knowledge holders of a culture that is lost and they're trying to preserve, and often these people are not of that ethnicity that this culture is particular to. So, and it's not the fault of those who are of the ethnicity that these people have actually taken the time, the expertise, the love, and the passion to learn this stuff. So more power to those people who have done that, who are not of the ethnicity, to pass that information on, because the majority of Filipinos, like you said, they often don't realize that we have our own indigenous art. We have our own like long-standing fighting lineage and legacy. So that should be celebrated, and more importantly, celebrate those who actually pass this information along and reconnect to it. So yeah, it's important. Like, and here's the other one too. So being a Filipino American, for one, I'm a first generation immigrant. I was adopted in the Philippines and immigrated in 1989. I haven't been back to the Philippines. I'm going back in 2026, but I was raised in the States by white people. So I wasn't taught Tagalog. I wasn't taught Cebuano. I wasn't taught these things. I was raised as an American. I was quite whitewashed, to use that term. But I mean, it's not my fault that this occurred to me. So it is my fault, however, if I continue not to pursue the knowledge. And this is the rant for the young, angry Filipinos out there, is that it's your responsibility to pursue the knowledge that you want to pursue, to get past all that pain. So if you want to use FMA as a conduit, fucking go do it, because it's a pretty awesome conduit.
Yeah. And I think it's, you know, I think also for myself, I can kind of say as well, like, you know, what I have is a source of some history and culture as far as the fighting arts go, but I'm not the source.
No.
You know what I mean? And anytime that I talk to people too about the history as well, I'm like, hey, Google that shit, man. Go look at it. Go look at it. Don't take my word. I'm not a holder of history. Maybe with the techniques itself in a way, but I'm one of several people. You know what I mean? And that can also be a way. I would get it if somebody is trying to lecture someone on the history, but I don't try to do that very often. You know, I'm always like, hey, Google that stuff. Go talk to other people. You know, look at the history. I'm not a holder of that history. You know, maybe with some of the techniques, I can tell you some of the history of it.
Yeah,
but not the culture of it. You know, so.
Oh, I mean, the fact is, in the monument that is the Filipino martial arts, you are a brick within that monument.
Right.
As evident by what you do anyways, as a teacher, as an instructor, as somebody who puts out positive content to the community. It's like you have a little placeholder in the legacy, and this monumental legacy that is the Filipino martial arts. So
Right.
definitely own that shit, and people need to have the respect for that, because the fact is, at least he's got some stakes in the game. The other people just need to get some stakes in the game and actually go add positively to that, so we can build up this beautiful thing that is our FMA community.
Right.
So
I just had a resurfaced memory, but you mentioned about any animosity for it. I just remembered, this is probably 4 or 5 years ago. I put a video. It's an old video on Instagram. I think I was doing the Sagitas somewhere. You know, I think the first time I ever posted it, and the first comment. Of course, it's a profile with no name, no picture or anything, and all it says is another white guy being ridiculous, or another white guy looking ridiculous. That's the most I ever got. I laughed. I thought it was great, you know. But that's the worst comment I ever got with what I did. Like, one comment on an Instagram video 5 years ago. But
I mean, it feeds the algorithm, so
sure.
that's really sad. My favorite is actually the commentary, especially like in the forums. But like, where is your stuff, dude? Where's your content? I mean, if you're going to talk some shit, at least put some stuff out there. So,
100%. Man, like when I first started doing TikTok too, all the guys came out, show me in a real fight, prove what you can do, and of course, these are people who don't train, or they do, but they're not competing fighters and everything. But it's part of it. You know, when you put out any martial art content, you're going to get that, you know, regardless.
That's why I just hijack it immediately with this fucking thing, because it's already ridiculous. So it already just like disarms their stupidity. So
I love it. Nice.
Yeah, it's fun. It gets me in a little bit of trouble, but it's my way to share what I love. Oh man. So if you were to be in charge of the universe for a day in the FMA community, what would you like to see change, or what could you change after this whole long thing about cultural appropriation? But still, we're going to jump right into this shit. If you could change something in the FMA community, what would you change?
Holy shit. Wow. It just changed one thing?
Just one thing. Or I mean, it could be a number of things, but
my God.
At a minimum, what would you change for the better, or suggest for change for the better?
Day, huh? Holy shit. I mean, you're talking like master of the universe, as in like magical abilities, like.
Dude, I got like the 5-finger death punch, purple chin, fucking.
Oh, Thanos, you got gauntlet. Okay, you can snap and make something happen.
Yeah.
All right, I'm going to have a really hippie tree hugging one, and I'm going to have one that's kind of cool but kind of shit stirring too. Okay.
Go for it.
First one is, once again, you know, hold hands, kumbaya, but for the politics just to be gone. You know what I mean? You see. I mean, I've had it happen to me a little bit too. But friendships being ruined by politics, disagreements, and these are people that love each other. These are people that are friends or family, and like, you know, a grandmaster dies, and these two guys can't fucking get along, and so you separate because you want to do your own thing, and it's just like going to FMA. There's so few of us, guys. So why would you want more problems? You know what I mean? We're all on the same boat, and if we can't get along, this art's going to die. You know, So I just see, even within the group, a lot of the Filipino systems all talk shit on each other anyway, but then they're fighting within themselves. I mean, once again, this is me like being magic to change it. I can't change it. It's not my business with everybody else, but I see certain things and I'm like, guys, this is unnecessary. It's like kids not getting along on a playground, and what you need as an adult to go, hey, cut that shit out, get along, play.
Yep.
You know, that's my nice one, right? My one that I want to kind of see what happens is, you and I both know this too, but history in the FMA lineage or communities gets so convoluted, and we all know that people kind of make their own history. Well, this is what happened. When I can talk to other people to say that didn't fucking happen. That didn't happen. That's not what happened. But some of these grandmasters know, or whoever, who are old enough that I can say whatever I want. So I would love for there just to be this array of knowledge to everybody to go back in time. This is what happened.
You mean like an archival, documented process of history, like actual FMA historians? I mean, there's a few out there, like Elric Junis, for example. But yeah, dedicated history, hell yeah.
So, yeah, well, or for someone to say, this is, even for a grandmaster to say, this is my style, this is how it was made. It's okay, like I said, but we do know that most of FMA history is oral history, right? So I know that people can say in a way kind of whatever they want to. I've heard things even in the PTK world about certain things that happened that I then talk to people and we go, that didn't fucking happen. That's not what happened. But it's all he said, she said, right? So like maybe an archive, but also maybe just even like a giant TV. Like, we're gonna watch what really happened. What really happened? You know what I mean? And I think certain things, going back to politics, well, this guy did this thing back in the day, this guy did that thing. None of us know. None of us know what happened. And so there's this feud. Is this guy a piece of shit? I don't know. I mean, some say he is, some say he isn't. But even just like a TV to like push a button and say, well, let's watch and go back in time and see what happened. Yeah. Just I wonder if all that was cleared. If that makes sense.
Oh, it makes absolute sense, because it would eliminate potentially the whole like, my grandmaster did this, therefore I'm awesome. It's like, no, you are not your grandmaster. You did not do this. You're only awesome based upon how awesome that you actually are, not by association.
Right. He chose me because I was the best guy. Really, let's go back and watch. What did he say? And we'll watch.
Paid your dues.
Paid your dues. Exactly. And I see a bit of that too. Like I ran into an old friend, not an old friend, but a guy reached out to me, Paul, if he's watching, who was a student of my teacher back in the day, Greg Alland. And Greg Alland being one of the top guys, and coming from Leo for a long time, it was very common for, and it happened with Greg a lot, as people would come to him to learn the system, Pekiti-Tirsia, right? Learn, get his foundation, and then go to Leo and get associated.
Yep.
I learned from Leo. You got your certification. Greg taught you.
Yeah.
And I'm not going to name any names or anything, but like, that was not uncommon. And of course, once again, this goes back to the thing. Greg was white. He wasn't Filipino. So they all typically wanted the certification from the source, which makes sense. But they would go to this guy because he's really good. Let me learn that. And so there's a lot of hush hush too, right? Yep. And so just a giant TV, a magical TV. Well, let's watch. Let's go back in time. This is a time machine too. We're going to see what happened. I want to see what happened.
Yeah, that would be awesome if we could do that.
Yeah.
If only. But in the meantime, what we can do is, what we can control is our little spheres of influence. As small in effect as they are, we still have an effect. So utilizing GM Bobby, for example, because I absolutely love the man, as do millions of people do anyways, but it is clearly evident with the community that he has created that his community is based upon his leadership of his positive effect affects everybody, and therefore sets the tonality for the community at large of like, he does not put up with shenanigans, because that's just not the kind of person that he is. So he's going to be nice, therefore everybody else is going to be nice, and it's just that effect trickles around. Some other FMA communities, that's not the case. So
right. So funny story, about maybe 4 maybe 5 years ago. I used to travel around for work, and I was going through Charlotte, and I texted June Occidental.
Nice.
I said, "Isn't GM Bobby in Charlotte?" He said, "Yeah, playing with him." Hell yeah, I do, sure. So we arranged it, and I went over to his house. It was kind of surreal because you watch these GM Bobbies all over YouTube, right? So I've been watching him for 7 years, and when you finally meet him, it's like,
oh
yeah, like maybe starstruck's not the right word, but there is that surrealism of a guy you've watched for so long, right?
Yeah.
So I did a couple private lessons with him, and it's a very different style from what I do, but that was enjoyable because it was so different, very different mechanics. But what stuck with me was just not his amazing hospitality. He was. I mean, that of course, awesome, genuinely good guy.
Yep.
Still very humble for what he is and what he does.
Yeah.
But the fact that he did ask about what style I did, and he didn't try to recruit me.
Yeah.
And I found that to be special for a man of that position to say, there's no loyalty owed. If you want to learn, if you want to be an instructor in my system, we can talk about that. All I ask is you just tell my story. Yeah. And that to me was a moment of like, okay, this guy's special. Because I was thinking like, he's a grandmaster, and this is the first time I ever met him. I'll probably work with him. He's probably going to try to recruit me into his system. He never did. Never in his agenda. So that was special to me. That is a gem of a person.
Oh yeah, he's special. I really, I love GM Bobby. So I'm going to go see him here in August for West Coast Camp down in Marysville, and like I've been going there the past couple of years. I've been meaning to go more often. Just want to shut the gym down, and then COVID, then all my mental health nonsense, and just things kind of lined up for me last 2 years to go do this. So I'm finally going to go do this. But I've been part of that community for quite a while. But the fact is, being able to hang out with GM Bobby is just great because, like, one, sit there in the evening gathering where we're just hanging out, eating food, like watching him sing karaoke is something special. Right. It is a beautiful thing. Or him just butting up against you and chuckling and just cutting up with you. That's amazing. So that level of humility is something to be celebrated. And more importantly, what it does is that sets the tone of one, approachability, and it sets the tone for the rest of the community. They're like, hey, we're going to express the positive side by being positive. It's not manipulative. It's intentional because it's intentional because it is the right thing to do, and it helps eliminate the cult of personality and the ego manipulation structure that often comes from like, I am this guy, I'm a character. You should worship me because I'm that guy.
Right. And he's a great example too because he does his thing and he's genuine, he's honest. And that alone protects him. That alone protects his image. If anybody came out of the woodwork and said, "Oh, I'm a Tuwara Blinduak lineage," if he's not, we're all gonna know. You know what I mean? Because there's already so much integrity in what he's done that there's no place for a bad apple. It can't happen. Because of honesty. You know what I mean? So.
Yeah, it's awesome. And so with that, like, again, dealing with the effect that we have in our small circle, it sounds like with the effect that you have with your student base and past and present and leading into the future, that you are one of those positive gems that is creating a good circumstance for, one, the continuation of knowledge and growth of the community, but also just the enrichment of your own community, even outside of FMA. And so that I applaud and salute you for that, because we need more people like you that are great ambassadors for FMA, because there's a whole bunch of assholes on the internet. You don't seem to be one of them, and I appreciate that about you. So.
You don't know that yet? No.
Yeah, I mean, we're all it's a scale, but still.
It's a spectrum,
Yeah. Oh, that's awesome. So, speaking, we've been at this for almost a couple hours now. Do you have anything that you want to put out to the community to promote that's coming up for you? Or, I mean, obviously, check out your Instagram.
Yeah. So can I ask you something real quick?
Yeah.
If you're comfortable about talking about it, but you mentioned a bit about mental health. Yeah. So myself, or anybody who doesn't know, but I am medically diagnosed OCD, ADHD, which of course causes some anxiety problems. I find that training in itself is great medicine in a lot of ways. I have found that those things have also been gifts in my training, right? So when you have OCD, you see details, you know, you have ADHD, you have that superpower of hyperfocus. So there are ways that, you know, it can be a very suffering at times, but also it's a superpower if you learn how to use it.
Yes.
You know what I'm saying? And that was one of the things when I found this art. Like I said, I was one of those guys I was just freakishly talented at it. Like there's a lot of things that I'm not good at, but you know, and Greg saw that because I remember when I went to one of his training camps, I was 16, flew out to Virginia Beach, and it was 5 days, 8 hours a day. Sweet. We're going to go with the material. If I like what I see, you're going to walk away with a certification. So usually what he did is he made you a instructor candidate, because you're not an instructor until you have teachers, right?
Yeah.
So I remember it, and it was kind of cool because I was the youngest guy there. I was by far, and Greg at the time was in his early 60s, so I think he was delighted about it. Like, there's this kid that's this, and you know, I'm getting it. So he worked a lot with me, and you know, developing the skill. But I remember he made me an assistant guru when I left there, because he said I can't let you leave with anything less. So he saw my talents, you know what I mean? And but I do think with ADHD and OCD, those help. You know, you can definitely turn that energy that is sometimes a suffering energy into a superpower. So for anybody watching, I hope they know that it'll help you if you know how to channel it. So
pain has purpose. Pain has a purpose, and if you put it to task, you can find some beautiful peace in the end, and you can also turn it into a passion project. It's a whole lot of alliterations with the letter P, but the fact is, pain has a purpose, and once you find a way to contextualize it and make it functional for you, for one, you got to get out of the trauma state, for one, and you got to get into that growth mindset and post-traumatic growth and post-trauma. But the process therein is full of failure. But those failures, for one, helps inform the end result, provided you succeed. Because there's also the hard truth that a lot of people face pain, a lot of people face trauma, and the process of building resiliency and confidence through capability and facing adversity. There's a lot of people that just don't make it in the end. They just don't succeed. This isn't a Disney movie, but there's a lot of people who are so broken because of all the things that they experience that they don't make it. But those who do help those who are in the process of figuring that out. So, but that comes, again, all that experience of experiencing pain and putting it to task. Again, pain has purpose. And it seems like, and it sounds like, you have figured that out for you. And again, my congratulations for that. That's awesome.
Thank you. And I'm a big believer, you and I both being instructors, but I mean, developing the skill is one thing, but you have to give it. You have to teach. And to me, my skill is meaningless unless I can share it. So with what I've been through, I have to share it. I have to. You know what I mean? So yeah, and so with my experiences and my mental illnesses as well, I have to share my experiences with that too. And even bouts, like you said, the trauma state, or even just bouts of severe depression when you don't want to do anything. We go back to Carenza, man. It's when you train, you start to learn yourself more. And I find that too with martial arts is you're learning yourself. And there are times too, if I'm feeling a certain way, I flow or I play guitar, and it helps because that is a way that you're working on yourself and you're in control of that work. So
I mean, it's the whole thing of mastery of self, and movement is medicine. So that's awesome.
And even in a strange way, sticks hurt. Getting hit by sticks fucking suck. I mean, honestly, like I remember the first time doing stick sparring, it was like, as a kid, very difficult. And of course you get better. So you learn from that pain. You learn from that. You learn to observe the pain and not identify with the pain. You also learn not how to take pain personally. So if you can do it outside on your body and your hands or your elbow or your shoulders, you can do it with your feelings, not to take it personally. That's not me. What is that? Can I look at that? Can I learn from that? So levels of how the training helps with that. So
and it goes to the fact that we are more than a professional punching bag.
Yeah.
It is, because I mean, the fact is, the responsibility of knowledge, as you stated, and I agree with, is to share it.
Yeah.
So, and we become better with each generation, so long as we are able to share the better means of what having gone through all that adversity and all that pain, put it to task, put it to purpose. So, again, anybody who can do that, congratulations, you are making the world a better place by doing so. So, yeah.
Thank you, man. I appreciate that.
Awesome. I think that actually would be a great place to stop, because we've been at this for a couple hours. I would love to bring you back on again, because more and more that I get to celebrate and share the people that I appreciate, I'm more than happy to have them on, because honestly, here's actually what I talk about this all the time, but the podcast is a guilty pleasure for me to talk to people that I normally would be able to talk to and have cool conversations. But the other one too is, I don't really realistically teach anymore. So the way that I share my knowledge is through the conversations that I have with people. And so I thank everybody for the gift of their time for me to share what I have to say, along with what they have to say. So I don't have a brick and mortar school. I don't necessarily have a class. I have a few students in the long term, but this is really my primary conduit of which I share my information. So thank you for spending time with me.
Of course, man. I appreciate you. I think this is great. This has been a fun time, and I'll come back anytime.
Sweet.
Yeah. But yeah, I think you asked too, as far as anything else. The only thing I have coming up is June 22nd here in Glen Burnie, Maryland. We are doing a knife seminar. I may have a poster there somewhere. There's one right there. Yep. So that's Muscular Dennis Ocampo, who is the official successor to Greg Alland. That's my girlfriend Stephanie, by the way. I train her when she lets me.
Nice.
So now she gets nervous about it, but she's actually very natural at it. So, but the focus will be knife work with a bit of Silat work. But we have that coming up, and would love anybody to join us. I will, I think, do a live stream of that as well.
Sweet.
Yeah, and once again, I do this to share. So if anybody's interested, hit me up on Instagram. I do virtual lessons as well, and I do have some Patreon content to kind of get you going. My main thing that I kind of start showing, or kind of the angle I take when I show people, is I get a lot of people who are already FMAers, right? So, build a bit of speed, build a bit of power, enhance your footwork. So I call it Kali enhancers. So
nice.
I'd love to help anybody that I can. So yeah.
Yeah, I'll post those in the show notes afterwards, and of course they get published to Spotify and YouTube and all that. So yeah, definitely give me those details. I'm gonna get them posted later. So awesome. Cool. But yeah, well, I'm gonna drop you down. I'll say goodbye with everybody. Just hang out here in the lobby for me, and I'm gonna do my sort of short outro.
Do it. Cool.
I appreciate you, bro. So everybody, thanks for hanging out with us. Today is turning out to be a better day. I was having a rough morning this morning, but here we are. Had a great conversation. I was glad to share it with everybody. One little bit of housekeeping because I need to do better at this, is I need you to do me a favor. Aside from YouTube and Instagram and all that, go to Spotify. Find me on there, because that's where I post everything for the podcast. Go to Spotify. Subscribe to it. It's easier for me. Please. Thank you. Anyways, with all that, no long outro, but here we are. Have a wonderful day. Bye.